I'd like to call the special board meeting of the Marshalltown Community School Board to order. This is the time and the place for that meeting on Wednesday, February 6th. We'll dispense with the pledge and all of those kinds of things and get right to our presentation. And after the presentation, we'll allow for public comment, and the sign-up sheet is on this end of the table for you.
Well, thank you, Mark and Brenda, for coming back to share with us further beyond our last meeting in terms of your further analysis of our insurance program, and we're glad that you were able to make it today despite the weather.
So are we, and safely, yeah.
Now there's the getting home.
There is the getting home, but you've got some fine facilities here in town. If we have to stay, we'd be happy to do that. Do you want us to go ahead?
Yep, go
Okay.
ahead.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you, Madam President, and Dr. Schutte for allowing us to serve the district. It's a pleasure for us to work with your district. Just on a personal note, we found your administration, your board, and the many stakeholders throughout the course of our various meetings over the past several months to be very hospitable, engaging, and it's been a pleasure to serve you, so thank you. What I have for you this evening is a short presentation, really. It's, I believe, only about 19 slides or thereabout. It's an abbreviated summary. A lot of the material and the weeds have been covered previously in other meetings, but this culminates in what we consider to be more of an executive review that you have asked us to look at from our last engagement with the board. And so we're responding in kind with some of the directives that you have given us, along with that of your administration. If I could direct your attention to page 5. When we last met with the board and we talked through with you and your administration on the types of things that mattered to you as a board in guiding your district forward on benefits, and we talked through some of the ramifications and just the facts of how some of these plans were running, we left with some of these guiding parameters that we've continued to use and will demonstrate to you this evening that our suggestion meets most all of these. The first one is you wanted to retain better than average benefits. We work with about 1/3 of the schools in one fashion or another across the state, actually maybe a little more than that. And so we regularly see how benefits compare. And it was your guidance and direction that you want to retain benefits that are better than most schools and better than average than most schools for your recruiting and retention. We want the plan, you directed, I should say, that you wanted the plan to incent good consumer behavior. We identified a few aspects in your plan where there was no incentive for stewardship, and so you've asked us to incorporate elements of that. We also want to take time in moving forward, no matter what your decision, to support your administration team in helping them teach and educate your employees on some of the tools they have available that the district is paying for completely, that they could use and take home more money in their household income, and that's through the use of the flexible spending account. So you instructed us to do that. We want to make sure that the plans are adequately priced, and that was another objective. The other thing you charged us with and we talked about is trying to make strategic changes that over the course of time would reduce the trend of healthcare. And this is the one guiding parameter I can't identify tonight that we're doing, because it's a Monday morning quarterback review. It's going to be a an experience that we have to get into these changes if you choose to make them and see if they are truly accomplishing the intent. So we will know that in time. We feel that they will, but time will tell. The other thing you asked us to do, finally, is to ensure compliance across all the plans in accordance with state law and federal law and the many nuances there. And we've been working with your team. We'll continue to work to help review those aspects. You had voiced some other considerations in that it was your desire to have equity among the plans. We didn't want a skinnied down plan and a Rolls-Royce plan. We wanted the plans to be all plans. Whatever plans you offer, however many plans you offer, you want them to be of quality, of substance, provide adequate coverage to protect household incomes. We talked about surcharge and the opt-outs, and one of the things we talked about is that since you have such a nice plan, it is quite probable that you are attracting people to your plan that work in other places around town that might possibly be able to be covered at their respective employer, but choose to be on your plan. That's part of the choice you give. That's not uncommon. It's just that when we see school plans oftentimes being the richest, they sometimes become the magnet, and there can be some adverse selection. I would say it will take a little time and take more administrative work to know if that's really happening here or not. But we set up some reporting with Wellmark so that we'll be able to track that to see. The other thing is you asked us to consider a transition that would be somewhat smooth and not disruptive, trying to minimize, if a change is made, trying to minimize as much disruption as possible for your people. And we understand that, and your district. And then it was your desire that the cost going forward be equal or less to what you're paying now. So what I'd like to show you are some of the alternates that we think move us in that direction. If I could direct your attention to slide number 7. This, for your review, is just a brief summary. It is not the full legal description of your plans, but it's a brief summary of the 3 plans you offer today: the premium PPO plan, the standard PPO plan, and your HMO Blue Advantage plan. Couple things I would note, and I think I can highlight this if technology will serve me here tonight. Your PPO plan is the richest plan, and it has the most people enrolled on it. Not a surprise. It is the most popular plan and is especially most popular with your single people, and that's probably due, and I shouldn't say single, I should say single enrolled, because of the way you structure contributions, and over the years you pay for employees who work for you. That's an attractive plan to be on. The other plan that is second most popular is your HMO Blue Advantage, and it has not quite as many people, but it particularly has a lot more families. It is the lowest cost family plan. And so that's why, given the way your rate structure is, we believe that a lot of families looking to minimize their cost, to maximize household income, have migrated to that plan because that's got the lowest rate. And then in more recent times, you added the middle plan, particularly for the purpose of small families, what we call employee and children, and you'll see you have 54 people there, and that's the highest enrollment on that plan. So what's interesting is that most of your single enrolled have taken the richest plan. Those with the smallest families have taken the middle plan, and those with the larger families have opted for the lowest family rate. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's a clear indication that price is driving choice. And anytime you offer more choices, you are susceptible to adverse selection. On the next slide, if you were to make no changes in your plans, if you kept those plans and you kept all the choices you have today, in reviewing the financials of your plan and working with your vendor, we believe that a necessary increase just to get the plan priced about where it needs to be for next year would be in the neighborhood of almost 20%. That 20% represents almost $1.5 million or thereabout. In a desire to protect your household income of your employees, and hypothetically, if you were to not increase any cost to the employees through payroll deductions, and you increase their cost by 0, then the balance of that would shift back towards the district. And the 5.9 million that we show is roughly budgeted for the district's portion today would have to go up the entire difference, thus making it a 25% increase against the district. So the total plan needs about $1.5 million. If you don't intend to share that, if the district were to absorb all of that, effectively it becomes about a 25.4% increase against the district. Does that make sense? I mean, that's a
Or
choice.
$2.5 million.
Or $2.5 million, right. So, or 1.5, yeah. Yeah, $1.5 million. So,
Mark, can I ask you,
yeah, yeah.
on slide 7, the one you were just on,
Yes, sir.
do you know off the top of your head what employees' share of each of those plans are? How much they have deducted from their check on a bi-weekly or monthly basis for these?
We have been given that information. I don't have that here at my fingertips, and I think it varies by classification.
Can you tell me?
Well, I can show you, we have a spreadsheet. It depends on what group and stuff you're in. It varies. There's 7 different classifications of employees, so I can certainly share this, but
It ranges
it
from.
ranges.
Can you tell me the range for each
Sure.
of the 3?
Yep. So for certified single, employee range is from 0 to 9.8%.
Do you have it in dollars?
Yes,
How
Cer-
many dollars a month that they're paying?
right. This is per month. Certified single, from 0 to $69 a month.
When you say certified single, what does that mean? How do I reconcile that $9 a month to that sheet? To this sheet?
You won't.
Okay.
Because we have several different classifications of employees, and every group has bargained those costs differently. So within a certified single, they have 3 different options of plans. So for the Blue Advantage or the Alliance Standard, it's zero cost to the employee. For the Alliance Premium Single, they would pay $69 a month. For a certified family, for the employee child option that was added last year, for this year, or 2 years ago, the employee would pay $91 a month. For the Alliance Premium Family Plan, an employee would pay $837 a month.
That's the premium PPO family, the one that there's 76 families in, they pay $800 a month.
$837. The Alliance Standard Plan for a family is $742 a month. And the Blue Advantage family is $522 a month. And that's for a certified family with one spouse working for the district. Now, if both spouses work for the district, for the Blue Advantage family, the cost to the employee is $0. For the standard family, the cost to the employees would be $107. And for the premium family, it would be $202. We have different rates for 12-month secretaries, 10-month secretaries, buildings and grounds, paras, concessions, and administrators.
Mark, when you came here before,
Yes, it was back in November.
you said to us then, you thought that the plan that we offered employees was as good and nice a plan, I won't put words in your mouth, so I don't have to confirm it, as good and nice a plan as you have seen.
I would say I would To clarify, it's the richest plan I have ever seen in my 30-some years in my career. And let me
Rich
be
and nice, those are synonyms, right?
the best.
Yeah.
Uncommonly best. And I would point to the out-of-pocket as being the single largest distinguisher there on your premium PPO. The worst-case scenario for a single person is $100 in the entire course of a year for their medical expenses. That doesn't address what they pay through payroll. That's for medical. For a family, it's $200. I've never seen one that low. Now, I say it's nice, it's rich, it is a tremendous benefit. Other people would say, well, it's excessive, it's too low, it's uncommon. So I'm not trying to make an opinion about it. My opinion is that it is not available in the market. We couldn't buy that from a carrier. Nobody sells plans that low. So I've never seen, we thought it was a typo. Frankly, when we got your documents, I thought it was a typo. So it is uncommonly, extremely much, it's better than anything else I've seen. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you wish for me to continue, or did that, okay. Paulette was able to answer. Thank you, Paulette. So when we look at what a needed increase would be if you made no changes and the $1.5 million at stake, some of the directives you gave us back in November are on page 9. You charged us to pursue solutions that would make sure the plans are financially stable and independently solvent on their own, and to seek something that is budget neutral, trying to protect the district's dollars and trying to protect household income through payroll, trying to find some type of neutrality arrangement. To do that, as we look at your plans, we believe it's necessary for you to make sure you have enough reserve funding to ensure the financial stability of the plan and adequacy of rates. We think the plan changes are going to have to be the driving factor there to try to bring it into neutrality. And then we think there are aspects of your self-insured plan that need to be updated, that we need to track differently in terms of run-out liability, an exit strategy we talked about, in that if something really went wrong in terms of medical expenses in a year and the board were to say, we want to get out of this, it could be profoundly expensive right now for the district. Not that we think you will want to do that anytime soon or that you need to right now. We don't. But there are some contractual provisions we can make with your vendor without any additional cost that would give you an exit strategy and limit the degree of your exposure if you ever wanted to exit. So those are some of the goals you charged us with and some of the assumptions we're taking into. Just by way of a reminder, on slide 10, I just would remind the board that when we reviewed the sum of all three medical plans together, and in conjunction with that also your dental plan, that both of those plans, medical or dental, more money is going out in expenses than has been coming in through the budgetary setting of rates. The loss ratios exceed 100%, which means more money is going out than coming in. And so it quickly became evident to us that we needed to look at solutions that would right-size your plans and then fulfill the expectations and parameters you gave us. The next slide is rather busy, and I'm going to apologize for it, but it demonstrates a summary only of the many options that we have found out in the marketplace, and we are going to suggest for your consideration one of them. What you see here is a graphing along the bottom of your current rates times your current enrollment and what that generates in total budget dollars. And it's broken down by the many components of your plan: claims, administration, federal taxes, state fees, even our fee is in there, to try to look at what the total plan cost. In the past, and it's very common in self-insured plans like yours, when you get a renewal from your insurance administrator, they often give you a renewal on just their portion of cost, the reinsurance and the admin, and they do not include all of the cost of the plan. That has been the case, it appears sometimes over the past years, that there's been other elements that weren't added in. So what we look at here is, of all the options, most of these options shift the cost of claims through plan design. If we increase a deductible, for example, then that shifting goes from the plan to the covered member, an employee. So as we look at alternate plans, we are looking at realignment and shifting of dollars. In order to get to a budget neutral goal, the one that stands out, and we talked a lot about this with some of your other stakeholders in other meetings, is what we're going to refer to, and we'll come back to this, is alternate 3A1. And I'm going to try to highlight that for you here. This option right here. It would, from your current budget, which we showed to be around $7.5, $7.6 million, it is the one that keeps you closest to where you are. It offers the least amount of disruption. There are other changes you could make that would save the district more, but it would come at a higher cost to your employees. So it strikes the balance, we think, of all of the changes that you've, and the parameters that you've charged us with. So I'm going to elaborate on this one a little more going forward. Please know that up until this point, the details of these plans have been gone through with your administration and your stakeholders and various members of the district to try to vet through some of the differences. And so our proposal to you tonight is going to be a suggestion that accomplishes the goal, but I understand you'll be making your decision later.
So are you saying that any of the people in the audience here, this is not the first time that somebody feels this?
I can't speak for who's in the audience, but we have certainly met with a lot of your stakeholders. I'd have to defer to some of your administration on if members of the audience, not everyone, I'm certain.
We met with
But we've had
MEA
union,
leadership.
Yeah.
We met with,
Yeah.
or the insurance committee, which is all MEA, and then we also invited our support staff union for
yeah,
buildings and grounds custodians, paras.
yeah, yeah. One of the things I want to preface is that when you are self-insured, as Marshalltown is, ultimately the setting of rates falls on the plan sponsor's shoulders, your district's shoulder. It is not Wellmark. It is not any insurance company that is ultimately responsible for pricing your plan appropriately. At the end of the day, you have to make that decision. And so when we get guidance from a vendor on what would it take if we made a change in plan design, we ask them for their actuarial opinion. You know, that would be one way of looking at it. But what we find on self-insured plans is that the guidance we are given actuarially, and I would just point to the lowest line here, this represents the amount of claim savings that Wellmark's actuaries felt would accompany the many changes we were looking at. The problem we have found is that sometimes these estimates are way off from reality on your specific plan. These are accurate estimates based on like Wellmark's entire statewide book of business, but they're not based on your people's experience. They're not based on just your plan. So it's kind of like trying to set a budget on the average salary in the state of Iowa and making that work for your household. You kind of have to look at your income and your expenses and not what everybody else is doing. So what we have found, and as we've worked with Wellmark, is we've taken a bit more of a conservative approach in terms of what those savings would likely yield to arrive at numbers that we would believe will solidify your plan and help it be right-sized price-wise. Does that make sense? I just want to disclose that because if we went with some of the estimates as you have in the past, they've been too aggressive, and they would underprice the plan. So let me share with you some of our recommendations, if I could direct your attention to slide 14. Upon our analysis and a review of all the alternates, and there have been many, when we look at the guidance you have given us and what we believe is your directive to try to be budget neutral, to try to minimize disruption, to try to encourage stewardship and the things we went through, we think of all the options, it's this alternate that we have labeled 3A1 would do that the best. And I'm going to show you what that would look like in the next slide. And so let me just jump to that, since I think that will be of greatest interest. What we are showing on slide 15 is your current 3 plans. And forgive me, in the upper row, I believe it's a navy blue row with white lettering. Yep. I am colored disadvantaged a little bit. So in the dark blue, that represents your current plan. What's in the lighter color, a light blue, I assume? Okay, good. Is the alternates that we would suggest. When we've run the analysis on your plan, the rich plan, the PPO plan with the $100 out of pocket, does so little to share cost between the district and the member or to incent stewardship. We don't see that there's a good way to retain that plan and accomplish the objectives as you've charged us. Now, that doesn't mean you can't keep the plan. That is totally your decision. But if you're trying to accomplish the objectives you've charged us to find and pursue, we think you should retire that plan. If we look at the second, your middle plan, which has been attractive for your small families, families of 2, or just people with, single parents, maybe with multiple children, you have an interest in protecting them. So we think that model you should retain going forward. And we would suggest that what is now your standard PPO plan, which is this plan right here, we would suggest you make some minor changes to it. We would leave the deductible and out-of-pocket as it is. That will help protect your people as it does today. We would change the co-insurance a little bit to incentivize people and hopefully try to bring in a greater awareness of the sources of their cost. That doesn't mean that they would pay more in deductible or out of pocket, because we'd keep that the same. It's just the rate at which you get there. We would leave we would leave the office visit structure as you have it. You have a co-insurance. That means when you go to the doctor, you pay 1%, and that's a desirable thing. We applaud your use of that, and that would also apply to urgent care. And then emergency room visits, as it is today, would remain subject to deductible and co-insurance. Mirroring the plan that we would encourage you to retire, we would carry forward the drug benefit you have there today and move that over and carry forward that RX out-of-pocket, which most of your people are under today. And we would change up the tiering on your copays for drugs. And here's why. Today, people on either one of those first 2 plans have a choice of $5 or $10. Generic, tier 1 is $5 and everything else is 10. That's a nice benefit. The problem with that is that a generic drug might only cost $4 or $5 a month and your people are paying a $5 copay. Sometimes we see generic blood pressure medicine literally costing less than a nickel a day, But when we start getting into tier 2 and tier 3 and tier 4, sometimes the cost of those brand name drugs can be $300 or $400. I think the average cost for a brand name drug right now it's over $300. And you're asking those people to pay $10. So if my choice is only a $5 choice, I don't have much incentive to look at the difference between different drugs, in class, between tiers, or anything. On one hand, it's a nice benefit you have that protects your people. We recognize that. But if the goal is to encourage stewardship, a $5 and $10 copay typically doesn't drive much in the way of incentives or behaviors. And we're finding groups like yours are moving to multi-tiered structure so that if you want the more expensive drug or need it, you can get it. And so we're not encouraging any limitation to drug coverage. We're not encouraging any limitation to pharmacy selection. We want your people to have every drug they think they need and their doctors recommend. That's important. And we want them to use the pharmacies that are throughout their communities and here in Marshalltown. But we would encourage you to move to a tiered structure where people are paying more of a reasonable percent or common percent for their respective tier. Does that make sense? Let me give an example. Specialty drugs, you have very few people using those. I mean, literally, I have more fingers on my hand than you have people using specialty drugs. These are life-sustaining drugs. We want your people to make sure they get their specialty drug. But where a generic drug in Tier 1 might cost a few dollars a month, specialty drugs typically are going to be thousands of dollars a month. And today, you're asking them to pay $10. So effectively, some of the people in Tier 1 are paying almost for all of their own drug cost, and those in specialty are paying less than 1% of their cost. It's not right. It's not wrong. It's a choice in terms of how you want to incentivize stewardship. And we're watching employers and schools try to align these tiers so that people are paying a more equitable percentage of whatever drug they get. Does that make sense? So the copays we're recommending you look at are common in the schools, are common in the industry, and it's the way we see things going. Those would be the changes to this plan. Questions before I go to the next plan?
I just had a comment, and I know that you stated this at the analysis meetings that we had both with the board and the respective groups that we met with, but at least in the recent past, you had shared that our standard PPO plan was overpriced.
Yes.
At the expense of subsidizing
Yes.
the premium PPO plan,
Yes.
which was grossly underpriced.
And that is demonstrated back on slide 10 there. That is correct. Anytime you have more than one plan, the whole nature of insurance is sharing. So somebody's going to have to help subsidize someone else. And the plan where your young families, small families are trying to save the most money is the plan that is the most overpriced. But it has to be to pay for the other one because it is 10% underpriced. So that is correct. I would say both the standard and the HMO are subsidizing the one plan that we would encourage you to think about retiring. That is correct.
Then in reference to the tiered drugs, so when we talk about stewardship, a lot of times that's in relationship to the doctor prescribes
Correct.
medication.
Correct.
And doesn't necessarily prescribe the lowest cost medication. if
Correct.
generic is an option and it's a brand name that's been prescribed, so at least invites the consumer to ask that question,
does.
either of the doctor
Yeah.
or of the pharmacist.
It does, and that's part of the stewardship, I think, that the board is seeking to have, is we want your people to talk to their doctors maybe just an extra 30 seconds about, is this the best drug or the best lowest cost or the most effective drug we should be taking? Sometimes, and I've experienced this even with my own physicians, if they say, well, does your insurance cover it? Well, then I'll just go ahead and prescribe you the newest, most expensive one. Let's try that. Well, you know, I appreciate the spirit of their intent, but it's not always been the most effective drug. So yes, we want to have this tiering in place to encourage all of your members to have additional conversations with their physicians and with the pharmacist. Increasingly, the pharmacists play a big role on this. Because as the complexity with drugs grows in the market, we find a lot of physicians are very dependent on the pharmacist. In fact, a lot of clinics are increasingly hiring pharmacists to be on staff to help them prescribe a better medication, lower cost, better efficacy. So the tiering absolutely facilitates that, we believe. The other change then on your other plan And let me say that this standard PPO plan uses your Alliance Select network. Alliance Select is the largest PPO network in the state. It lets you link in across state lines to other states and across the nation. It's very accommodating, and we think your people would value retaining that choice. So we would encourage you to keep that for now with this plan as it is today with these changes. The next plan is what is called your Blue Advantage plan, and it uses a network here in the state, also controlled by Wellmark, called the Wellmark Health Plan of Iowa, or acronym is the WIPI network. And it very much mirrors their PPO network. So Wellmark has two networks in the state. But we have found, and we have observed, and we've seen, and we have audited, and Wellmark would confirm that overall, the cost of the WIPI network runs about 4 to 6% less than the Alliance Select network for the same charges. And we see this a lot. Now, it comes with a little different emphasis. Being an HMO type plan, it is oriented, we want your people to select a primary care physician. We want them to go see that doctor. We want them to pursue preventative care. And so in the WIPI network, you'd find that sometimes physicians are incented just a little more, and that's kind of what we want, to catch things on the front end. Where we see the biggest discounts in the WIPI network is on the hospital side. So if you have large claims, we tend to see it be a little more aggressive in its pricing and a little bit more limiting. You know, they're going to try to keep you in the state of Iowa, maybe send you to Des Moines or to Iowa City before or until medical necessity says, boy, we need you to go to Chicago or Mayo. So offering those two networks as you do today, we're going to encourage you to keep that because we think your people would like that choice, and it creates a price differential that over time we can see which plan and which network is serving you the best so that future changes could realign where you want it to be. The changes we would recommend on the HMO would increase the deductible by $250 for a single, $500 for a family. It would increase the out-of-pocket $500 for a single and $1,000 for a family. Remember that the deductible is included in the out-of-pocket. It's not, you don't add them together. One is already included in the other. So that out-of-pocket goes up, but it goes up more in line with what we're seeing in the market, and it's still half of what your other plan is, which we think is good. We would use the 80-20 coinsurance as you have it today. We would increase the office visits just by $5 for primary care, and we would encourage you to consider charging a higher copay for the specialist, and here's why. The cost of most specialists is 2 to 3 times more than a primary care physician, and people need to see a specialist. We want them to see their specialist if that's what the doctor calls for. But if the cost is 2 or 3 times higher, we don't think charging the same $15 copay is much of a tool in the way of stewardship. Because the counter to that is we see people will just run directly to their specialist when their general practitioner might be able to take care of them just as well, just as effectively for a third of the cost. So part of the stewardship is using a $20 copay for all your general primary care physicians and a $35 copayment for all the specialists, cardiologists, neurologists, things like that. We would, and we should have highlighted this urgent care. That would also go up to $5, so my mistake there, I apologize. On the emergency room, we would leave that as you have it today. We realize that in this part of the state and in many other areas, sometimes the emergency room is the only clinic you can get to after hours. So we're thinking, let's just leave that alone. We don't see red flags in its utilization right now. And just like on the other standard PPO plan, we would mirror the drug plan. So you would basically have the same drug plan on both plans. And part of your guidance to us was to try to make the plans as equitable. And we think there's a lot to be gained in stewardship around drugs. That's going to be the largest growing part of healthcare in the next few years. We're seeing it everywhere. So now would be a good time to start to restructure the plan and to incent and encourage and perhaps reward, we feel, that element of stewardship. So our recommendation of all the alternates we've looked over for the past 6 months, funding tools, contract terms, and everything, got us down to keeping basically 2 of your 3 plans and making these changes as we've articulated here, and doing some of the other changes on the other side of the fence to help the administration in their preparedness and protection for the district that is negligible. It's not even impacting, I would say, your members. They're just more contractual in nature. We think of all the options we've looked at with your people that this model does the best in terms of retaining better than average plans compared to other school districts. It does a good job in terms of starting down the path of starting to incent and reward your people for consumerism and stewardship through their utilization of the plan. We think it sets up a good reason to further education with your staff to make better use of the tax-free tools they have that you are paying for, and we want to make sure they take advantage of so they can protect their household income. It will, we believe, be a huge step in getting your plans repriced where they need to be. Time will tell if it starts to bend the trend. So we didn't check that one off because, we'll have to see if it starts to do what we believe it will. But the actuaries at Wellmark in our office concur this would be a good start. The other thing is it sets in motion other things that we can work on with your administrative team in terms of plan pricing to make sure more facets are in compliance of your plan. That's a summary of where we boil down to reach these objectives of all the alternatives to be cost neutral. Before I go on to any next steps, are there questions you would have of me that we could entertain? Yes, sir, Mike.
So Paulette, you told me generally what costs were in our current plan. What do we estimate costs will be on these 2 new plans? That's kind of where the rubber hits the road for everybody in the back of the room here.
We are not in the place to have done the modeling between all of your different classifications because right now our objective was to get the total plan priced according to your parameters. So I don't think we've gone, to be honest with you, Mike, if this is in line with what the board wants, then I would say one of the next steps is to sit down with Paulette's team and go through how this trickles down. We know what it needs to happen at the top. Now we got to figure out what it does for each rate to align with what you would direct us to do or approve otherwise. So we haven't tried to calculate the many, many different rates for every possible model until we know this fits with your intent.
Yeah, that would seem like the logical next step.
We thought so. Yeah.
And then the other thing we talked about back in November was we talked about several things that encourage employees to take care of themselves so there's not catastrophic problems later for themselves and expense, for health insurance. Things like getting a mandatory physical every year.
Yeah.
And I didn't hear you talk about any of that kind of preventative stuff at all. Or I hear sometimes employers will pay for blood work for employees every year.
Yeah.
What about those sorts of things? And
Preventative is covered now, is it not? Yeah. Here's the good news, and here's the answer to your question, is your plans today, by law, already cover all that preventative stuff 100%. Under any one of those 3 plans, if your members will go in to get their preventative exam, blood work, workup and everything, your plans cover that today at 100%. We would not change that. We would narrow the plans, but we wouldn't take away that sense of preventative care that already is in your plan at 100%. What we would say is That would be part of the education we'd want to do with your people, to make sure your people know that no matter what some of these plan designs are, they can go get a routine annual preventative exam.
Is there a way to make them mandatory?
You know, I don't want to say no. I would say it gets incredibly complex if you start wanting to mandate behavior under a qualified plan. We start getting into tons of other laws that would be in conflict. But honestly, if it's covered at 100%, I think we would make a lot of inroads for you, Mike, just helping make sure people understand what's already available.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would rather help you use carrots than sticks. And I think a change like we're proposing here probably will hit people very different. And I think we need to walk into that, like you'd mentioned, gradually. To answer your question, wellness type plans that mandate exams and blood work and BMI workups, we're actually watching employers back away from that because there are so many other conflicting laws for discrimination and ADA and things like that that become a burden and cause sometimes an employer to fight lawsuits with the EEOC and things like that. So I think before we go there, I think we have a lot of room we can work to accomplish what you want, what you direct, yeah. Good question.
Do you see companies setting up incentive plans where if people go in and do those things, that there's a way to incentivize them at the end of the year?
Yes, yeah, we do. And here's what's been interesting. I think those were really popular 10, 15 years ago. I mean, the whole wellness movement is a good one. But what we have observed over the years is a lot of employers have a health plan that maybe is upside down. It's not working well. It's not designed well. And then they say, you know, maybe we should go spend more money on a wellness plan and do this in addition to a plan that doesn't work well. What I would tell you I think is becoming more popular with some of our larger employers, including doctor clinics and hospitals, is to go back to making this the wellness plan. Make your main health plan or plans the best tool you have to protect, to incent, to reward, to create stewardship. Let's get this plan set up first and see if we need to spend anything or do anything else for incentives and rewards. Usually they come at extra money. To be honest with you, I would fault my industry, I think, for sometimes overselling that as another revenue means. I'm all for wellness. I'm post-heart attack. Believe me, I'm all about wellness. But what I find is a good health plan goes a long ways to encouraging your people to be healthy. I think we need to help educate them.
Educate? Okay, thank you.
I think we could do a lot there to educate.
Mark, is there a lifetime maximum amount on this
No,
plan?
there's no longer lifetime maximums on your benefits. By law, those had to go away. So your people are covered for whatever, whenever, as long as they're on the plan. Yeah.
Other questions from the board for Mark?
Yeah. Sean, you've sat through most of these meetings with us, I believe, so he could probably give the presentation at this point.
So I'm curious, how long is the process, the next step, which is to identify the individual cost? Is this a 2-week, 3-week, 2-month? Just trying to get a feel for the timing that it takes before we have some of those numbers.
Yeah, I would
Not
think.
trying to hold you to it,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get a guesstimate.
I'm thinking a couple weeks. I mean, I guess if we had, from the time we get a clear direction on, you know, we'll go with, if you want to go with our recommendation, realizing there are others you may wish to consider, I think if we knew that's where you wanted to land, we could circle back with Paulette, and I don't want to speak for you, but from our perspective, I would think you'd want to have that done in 2 to 3 weeks. I mean, I would hope in February we could have that teed up. I would think you would want that for some of your other budgetary concerns, and
So after a decision's come to, then 2 weeks for that?
I think 2 to 3 weeks ought to be doable.
Back on the plan summary page,
Which number are you on there, Ben?
sorry, 15.
Yes, sir.
Would it, there's some, between the two proposed plans, there's some differences in co-insurance and office visit co-pays, but would you
Yes.
mainly characterize these as a higher and lower deductible plan? Or are there things in here I'm missing that someone would want to, if there's an employee trying to decide which is the right plan for them, is that the main differentiator, or are there other differentiators here?
Yeah, my answer to your question, when I think about how to protect my wife and kids and my family, I don't look at the deductible, and I don't look at the copay, and I don't look at the coinsurance. I go straight to the out-of-pocket. Because no matter what the deductible is, no matter what the coinsurance is or the copays, if they add up to the out-of-pocket, that's my worst-case scenario. And I'm buying insurance for the worst-case scenario. You know, I'm not buying it for Band-Aids, so to speak. So I think your out-of-pockets right here, as they're presented and suggested, are attractive. They're far better than the one I'm on right now. I'll tell you know. I think they represent a better than average compared to other schools. I think you'll see a lot of schools are moving into the $2,000, $3,000, and $4,000 range for out-of-pockets we're seeing across the state. So I think your plans are still better than average. They're not too rich in our opinion. They're not at one extreme. I think they move you along the continuum and keep you better than average.
I'm just, between the two, though, that's kind of the big.
Yeah, well,
differentiator.
here's some thinking. Here's the difference. One is the PPO, one is the HMO. So if I had well, my wife and I had a special needs child, if we needed to go out of state, I'd probably pick the PPO plan, regardless of what the plan design is, so I can go to Mayo or Chicago or you know, Colorado or someplace. So if your people need to get around the country for specialized need, the PPO is a nice option. Where the HMO, as long as all my doctors are here in the area and I'm happy with the hospital, I might just go with the HMO and save the money and enjoy a lower out-of-pocket. The other one is the co-insurance. What we like about the PPO plan, and we think down the road we'll probably want to think about this on your HMO, is we like co-insurance because every time somebody walks into the doctor, and if they know they have to pay 10 or 20% of that charge, they will know what the charge is. In my case, my doctor has often, they can usually charge me between $90 and $150, depending on what they feel I'm there for. But because I have to pay a portion of it, I'm quick to ask, hey, you know, is that going to fall in the $90 bucket today? And now, okay, yeah. So they check that CPT code and away we go. Well, I just saved, $60, you know. And that's the kind of thing we like with co-insurance. We think that's working for you now. We wouldn't get rid of that. We would tweak the other one for copays. And here's the opposite part of that. Some of your people, particularly those with young children that have frequent office visits, lots of runny noses, they like the security of knowing it's just $20. It's just $20. I don't have to worry about if it's 30, 40, or 50. It's just $20. So we think that's a nice balance for you right now. And I think we need to, you know, year down the road, if you go this route, we need to track it and see if it's working, if it's helping people, how they're using it. So did I answer your question satisfactorily? Okay.
You touched in his answer about competitiveness, and of course, that's important when you're trying to recruit and retain quality employees.
Yeah.
When you come back, you're obviously going to come back again and say,
We
here's
would like
what the
to. We hope
prices
you'll
would
let us
be,
come.
and,
Yeah.
Would there be a way for us at that point to see, here's what, you know, the other school districts that are like us or that are close to us, or that we would compete for employees where they're at too?
Yeah, you know, here's what we've done some of that for you
you've
already. We went through that in November. But Mike, here's something I'd be willing to think about and look at with you and we've done this with some schools. Obviously, you're not competing with all 300 and some districts in the state. There are probably some in the area, or maybe there's similar schools in your class and size that across the state you compete with. So if we need to drill down on just a few schools that are, I don't want to say troublesome, but they're too competitive and they're pulling good teachers away from you, we absolutely can pull up their benefits and help you make that comparison. In fact, we just did that for Ankeny. You know, they compete with West Des Moines, Urbandale, and Johnson, and a few right in that area. We just zoned in on that. And so if that's something your administration needs, we absolutely can help them get that. Yeah.
We can look at that in benefits, but if you're asking contribution-wise, we won't be able to tell you that. Is that what, you weren't asking that, what they're paying?
I don't know if that I was asking either, but now that you've pointed me down, I'd say, I'd like to know all the data. Janelle says I'm a data guy.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't have access to all of it, but we could certainly get the plan designed for you. Yeah, yeah.
And some districts put all of that information out on their website.
It's out, that's usually where we get it. Most school districts will post it. It's public, yeah. Good comparison.
And I would say the Golden Circle
Yeah.
schools
Yeah.
would be a good comparison group, because oftentimes our people reside in those areas, yet commute and work for us, and at some point or another might get stolen away.
And wasn't it 25% of your people commute into the
Yeah.
district? I mean, when we plotted the zip codes of where all your people lived, I thought, wow, they're everywhere. I mean, you've got a lot of people drive a long ways to be in your district, which,
Yeah, the Ames corridor, the
Yeah.
Des Moines corridor, and obviously the surrounding communities would be the
yeah,
primary.
we could help you zone in on that. Yeah. Good questions. Other questions I could address for you? If there are none, just by way of a summary, just so you kind of know what our next step would be, at some point, we just need a finalization from the district on which way you want to go. You've asked us to try to narrow it down to a recommendation. We feel we've done that. We feel our recommendation accommodates, to the best of our ability, the best mix of all the objectives you've laid in front of us. And then we would share and work with your administration team on rolling out communications, offering explanations. There's a number of ways we could do that, whether it's in-person meetings or materials for people to read. We've even, and I'd like to look into this, maybe just do some short video clips that we could set out to help your people after hours or tap in. A benefit not communicated is not a benefit. So we'd really like to step closer with you and help you, whatever change you decide to make or not make. We'd like to help you communicate the value of what you're doing. And then we just chase down the paperwork and move forward with your administrative team. That's the summary we've prepared. I hope you find it in line with what you were needing and expecting. And this time I defer back to you, Madam President.
Okay, we would encourage any of you who have comments to share during public comment to sign up. I know that we have, okay. Let me just remind you, as in other board meetings, that you're given 5 minutes during public comment. And according to policy and open meetings law, we cannot respond, but we will certainly write down any questions that you have, and the appropriate people will respond. Pardon me? No, this is just comment.
So this isn't part of the agenda item discussion? Okay.
The presentation was just an agenda item, that's it. Yeah. Are you the only one on the sheet, Sue?
I am at this point.
Thank you.
I think they want you to use the microphone.
Thank you. Good evening, I'm Sue Cahill, 202 North First Street. I appreciate the work you've done on this. I have had, in the last 12 years, used the 2 different plans that we've had, and I've used that premium plan and paid for it. And I have 2 children who are diabetics, so we appreciated that premium plan. I appreciate the work you're doing. And now that I'm a little bit on the other end and those children have grown and are using, paying their own insurance, I still have one on with me, you know, I look at it going, you're right, I am paying for those people that, I'm paying higher deductibles. So I do appreciate that you're talking about. And you also, in looking at your guiding parameters, I appreciated having those out front so that we can look at what is guiding this discussion. I do have a question, and I don't know if you can't answer it or all. I know in the change to our collective bargaining laws, I'm asking, is this a one-size-fits-all every employee plan? Or will different units have different versions of it? I mean, I know you talk about equity among plans, and I just don't know what that means. And so I guess I'm saying, do the certified staff, the classified staff, the buildings and grounds, the paras, do all employees, will they have the same two options to look at? And I don't know if that's something you can answer now, or I can go on if that's a question you don't know. Again, you do in your guiding parameters mention equity among the plans, and you also mention cost neutrality for the district, and I appreciate that. I would ask that you look at the option to also include administrators who now receive a single plan, full premiums paid for vision, dental, prescription, and medical as per Board Policy 312.3E1. I wish that you'd look at that option as far as spreading that cost neutrality out. I appreciate there are administrators who are in different salary levels for their experience and their expertise, and I appreciate that they bring to the table and the fact that we reward them for that. But the people who make the least amount of money are supporting the medical costs for those who make the most money in our district. And so I would ask you to look at true equity across the plans if it is to apply to all employees, that we share that equally across and use other means to reward our employees rather than paying for their insurance that really is being paid for by the other members of the plan. Thank you.
Just so that you're aware, Sue, I do have all of your questions written down.
Thank you.
And I didn't
sign.
Well, come sign.
It's just a question. It'll be a fast one, and a statement.
I thought you were just putting this all in.
I know, right? Rachel Nelson Loopy, 1912 South 3rd Avenue. My first question is on the current standard PPO. It shows that there are 30 single people and one family person on that. When we wrote that plan, it was supposed to be for only employees and children. It was supposed to be one adult and children. That was what our understanding was. So we're curious as to who the 30 singles are and the one family who's on that plan. That's question number one. Question number two, is this plan then going to be open to all families? So 2 parents, multiple children. And then there was a factual error in the one of the statements that Mr. Becker made. We, on the premium plan, if our prescription is less than $5, we do not pay $5. I pay $2.33 for one of my prescriptions. I pay $4.34 for another, and there's a $7.42 one as well. That's a Tier 2 prescription. So there are benefits to shopping around from your pharmacies as well. One medications that I take, I get for free from Walgreens because of the agreement that Walmart has with them, and it would have cost me $10 a month if I got it from Drugtown, Heavy Drugstore. So that's something that could be educated as well. What was I going to say? Oh, the teachers had asked for a 250, 500, and a 500, 1,000 of the standard PPO, and we are wondering if that is going to be an option that could have been presented as well. If it was one of these that were listed of the 3A, and because those did not show on page 11 what the actual deductibles were what the choices, things like that were. We were just curious about that, because going, as a person who is on the 100, 200, being asked to jump to go to a 2,000, 4,000 with no hope of a raise this next year is gut-wrenching, and it's enough to consider a change in position, particularly since my husband has retired. So retaining your quality teachers could stem a lot on choices of insurance plans. Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Let's get you all to sign up at the same time.
Mobility is not my strong point.
Or- Anybody else?
Katie Matt, 1909 South 4th Avenue. I wanted to piggyback off of what Ms. Loopy said. You've got 274 people on the the standard plan that you're planning on getting rid of. And right now, we pay about at least I pay $25 a month out of pocket and a $100 deductible. My prescriptions are around $5, but like Ms. Loopy said, I have a $1 prescription and then the other one is $0. And so if we're switching to the single plan with a $500 deductible and prescriptions would then up to $8 minimum, my concern would be that essentially, total right now, I pay $400 a year out of my pocket, plus about $60 per prescription, if you're talking $5 a month. If we continue the $25 insurance from my end, plus $500 for the deductible, and a $96 per prescription for the year, you're talking around $900 out of pocket for your single teachers, which is the majority of your new teachers that are incoming to Marshalltown, are single teachers that we now get a $110 increase from last year to this year. That's our raise, is $110. But our difference is over $400 in healthcare if we just keep to the minimums on everything. And that, as a teacher, is concerning when most of the teachers that are incoming to Marshalltown still have student loan payments and other costs that are not yielding. So you're looking at losing those new teachers to districts that will be closer, the commute will cut down, so gas will cut down, and the payments made to insurance will not be nearly as burdensome on those individual single teachers. Take that for what. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board before we adjourn? Any other comments from Becker and Associates?
One, if I,
Yes. Just so it's not answering any questions.
could it be a point of clarification about what we
Sure, it could be a
presented?
point of clarification.
Your legal plan document is stated such that it has a $5 copay. That is factually correct. There are instances in health insurance plans where if the cost of the prescription is less, they can apply what they call a lesser logic copay. And that person could actually walk out of the pharmacy paying a few dollars instead of the full copay. For our part, we had to represent the legal stated plan, which is the $5. And we would not have any way of knowing how many people or at what amounts they might enjoy the lesser logic feature, because that's not in the document and it's not reportable. So I just want to clarify
So my question to you then is the same thing could happen with the $8.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Any other questions? May I have a motion for adjournment?
Second.
Harris, Fletcher, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries 7-0. We are adjourned.